This week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim is an episode that I will officially dub the Mom episode, with a side of ridiculous tentacle-filled razor blade bloody action. This was a really good one. It was really heavy, especially when compared to some of the previous episodes of the series. But I really liked that because they actually handled the whole family dynamic really realistically. If this were any other anime series, it would have taken them upwards of 20 or more episodes before Shinichi's family even decided to confront him about all of the weird stuff that's been going on with him. And the weirder things just keep getting weirder. But let's just sort of talk about some of the best parts of this week's episode. It immediately picks up from last week where Shinichi's getting ready to throw down with A, and he's getting a little help from Migi. And the battle is really intense, the way their heads split open, and he's literally able to use his weapons like a whip, and using them at such high speeds that you really can't even follow with it half the time. And finally, Shinichi mans up, and he actually attacks him by stabbing him with that one leg from that desk. And what's really great here is that it's like a more bloody, more intense version of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character killing Bennett from Commando. The pipe literally gets stuck in his body and all of this blood starts to squirt out, and since they rely on the blood of the human bodies to live, he actually has to push out the pipe even further so that it'll get rid of the spout. And A actually starts to escape so that he can try and find Ryuko and take over her body, or at least join with it, but she actually ends up tricking him and creates this massive explosion which presumably kills him, but we actually don't get to see it fully, so there is a chance that A still might be alive. This leads to another confrontation between Shinichi and Ryuko, and it's really intense. Mostly because she finally reveals what she first thought when she was taking over the body, which is she feels the need to cannibalize the species that she took over. And it's hinting still to the fact that they might be aliens. They do this really cool shot where they pan out and you see a shot of the Earth, and it just gives it this otherworldly vibe, but it's still hard to tell if they're aliens or if they're a man-made creature. But still, Ryuko decides that she's still not going to kill Shinichi. She's still sort of interested in what he is doing. And the fact that she has a human baby inside of her just makes it so that Shinichi can't actually outright just attack her, because obviously he has some reservations about doing that. And Ryuko also reveals that, when she is pregnant, when she gives birth to the kid, that she's either going to A, experiment on it, or if it's useless, she's just going to eat it. The parts of this episode which are going to be really heavy for some, and the thing that I thought was probably most interesting about this episode is the whole theme of being a mother. Because they started out with this scene where Ryuko goes back to her apartment and she's confronted by her mother, who's completely freaked out because she doesn't even recognize her daughter, and that's obviously because a mother just knows. She can tell this is not her daughter anymore, and Ryuko has no choice but to kill her mother, and it's really intense and messed up. And the exact juxtaposition to this is this other story arc that's going on with Shinichi at his house, where his mother is really starting to notice that something's just not quite right with him, and she tries to confront him about it, but he just gets all angry, and he's also a little afraid over the fact that they're getting ready to go on this vacation, and he doesn't know if he wants them to stay around or if he wants them to leave, because he doesn't know how he should confront them about Migi. And they do this whole flashback sequence where his mother was cooking for them when he was younger, and she ended up burning her hand real bad with this cooking oil that was about to douse her son, and it's basically, she feels that's why Shinichi sort of resents her at this point in the story, and she feels that's what's really bothering him right now. And eventually they do patch things up and they get ready to go on this vacation. But it's just interesting to see the whole, alien, parasite, human dynamic of Ryuko and her mother and Shinichi and his. It really leaves the episode in a state of limbo, if you will. I don't know how to feel about it. It's so sad, it's not really uplifting, because nothing really works out for Shinichi at the end of this episode anyway. But Migi is working on some new abilities, which is pretty cool. He's actually able to detach himself from Shinichi's body, apparently for only a couple of minutes at a time. It's something he's working on. But this is something I didn't even think was going to be possible. They have mentioned that the Parasytes have the ability to relocate, but we haven't really seen the full functionality of that yet. The whole mystery of the Parasytes themselves is what's really driving this series. But what's the rundown on this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim? It was so heavy, and a lot of that had to do with the B story this week. The A story was all action. It opened up with intense violence. It was really exciting, it was incredibly well animated, and it just got the blood pumping. And it ended with an explosion, and all the stuff with Ryoko is great just because she's going to be a really fantastic character as the series goes on. I can't wait to see what her true motive is and how she ties into the whole origins of these weird parasite creatures. But it's that mom story this week that was just, it left me in a state of almost uncomfortability. And, you know, it leaves me hopeful, but, like, I was watching this with a friend, and, you know, first episode he ever saw, and just didn't really know how to take it. And it's the first episode of the series that really delved into that, and I loved how realistic it was, the approach to it. And I love the difference between the two. It's just, it was a genius way to do that. Otherwise, technical stuff, the animation, the artwork this week was just as good as it was in the previous episodes, which is to say it was freaking awesome. Everything else just worked here, and they didn't even like show any of the other side characters yet. This was just a really good side episode to develop Shinichi and his family. And since they're getting ready to go off on this vacation, there's a good chance we're probably not going to see them for a very long time. And this means we're going to be able to focus fully on Shinichi and Migi, and that gets me really excited for the next coming episodes. So I'm giving this week's episode a 4 out of 5. It wasn't perfect. The pacing was a little off in some parts, but for the most part, it was a really great development episode, and I loved the whole realistic family approach of the episode. Just really nice. And it was just gruesome and awesome, especially with the blood squirting out of the pipe at the beginning. That was just metal as hell. So 4 out of 5. Check it out. Really good episode. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked my review, please give it a thumbs up. Before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim. What did you think of that opening battle between A and Shinichi? And how did you feel about the rest of this week's very heavy episode? Before you guys leave, you can also subscribe to our channel. You can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You guys can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.